Hey, what's going on, everybody? Gareth with FCP. Today, we'll be filming our first Volkswagen video. We'll be working on a 2007 Rabbit today, and we'll also be installing an ST suspensions coilover kit. Of course, the process for this is going to be very similar if you're just replacing the standard shocks, but let's get started in the rear. All right, first thing we need to do is unbolt the lower control arm, which also has the spring perch from the wheel carrier. We're going to use an 18mm socket and an 18mm box wrench as our counter hold, and we're just gonna break it free. There's no alignments on this one, so don't worry about that. And before you pull the bolt out, make sure you have a floor jack or something supporting the control arm, only because there is tension on the spring, and you don't want the control arm shooting down and hurting you. So just make sure it's supported for now. Alright, now it's safe to go ahead and pull the spring out. With the coilover kit, you're not going to need this upper spring pad anymore because it will now have an adjustable upper spring plate, which you would use to adjust the height. Alright, next we have a 21mm bolt that secures the shock to the wheel carrier. We're going to have to remove that. Alright, now right here, you can see the bolts that secure the shock mount to the upper part of the chassis. You don't need to remove anything from the inside to gain access here. Just simply remove these bolts. We're going to be reusing the shock mounts. The car is low mileage, so these are perfectly fine. There's a little dust cap that sits on top. Just simply removes. And now you're going to gain access here to the locking nut that secures the shock mount to the top of the shock. It's a 16mm. Now this one, the OEM shocks, these are flat, so if you have a set of pliers, use those. To help aid in removing this nut, I just recommend hitting with impact real quick so it starts spinning. That's going to break it free, any corrosion that's stuck in there, and that'll aid us in removing this nut. As you can see, the shock mount's actually very solid. It's primarily metal, except for this little insert here for vibration, but that's perfectly fine. So no issue in reusing this one for this. Alright, so the new shock from ST Suspensions already comes with a bump stop and a dust sleeve, so you don't need to transfer anything over. We're going to take our old shock mount, because like I said, this one's perfectly fine. Also, they come with a new nylock nut. So we're just going to go ahead and start threading this on. The new nylock is a 17mm. I'm going to use a 5mm Allen as the counter hold. Just go ahead and take the old dust cap, put it back on. Just snaps into place. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and install the new shock, and then take your 16mm bolts, start threading them in by hand. And we're going to go ahead and take our 21mm bolt to secure the shock to the wheel carrier. Just going to start threading it by hand. Alright, so like I said, this is a coilover kit we're installing. If you were just simply replacing a spring, you obviously wouldn't have to worry about an adjustable spring perch. But we're here in New England. What I recommend doing on any adjustable coilover kit is to apply just a little bit of anti-seize onto the threads here. This is the spring perch. This will prevent it from seizing up where you wouldn't be able to adjust again in the future, because there are a few things that are worse in life than a coilover kit that is not adjustable. So and this will make sure that this coilover kit continues to be adjustable for years to come. Of course, I'm going to have to make an adjustment later with ride height, but for now, I'm just going to set it so that it's flush with the rest of it, just like that. All right, we're gonna go ahead, take our new spring, put it into the lower mount. There is a rubber shim or spring shim that you need to line this coil spring up with. The coil spring sits into the lower shim. You go ahead and take your upper mount, and then it's going to pretty much sit flush like that. Ride height adjustment's obviously going to be done by this spring perch here. The further you spin it down, the higher the car will be. The further you spin it up, the lower the car will be. We're going to have to go ahead and bring this car back down so I can jack up the control arm to compress the spring a little bit. We're going to go ahead and do that now. Now with the use of a floor jack, you're going to raise this lower control arm back up into ride height. I'm just wiggling the bolt all the way through. Take a hammer and whack the rest of it through. What I recommend doing is lifting the suspension up to ride height at this point. In this case, it should just be lifting off this inner jack pad. If you were at the ground on a jack stand, it would basically be the same process. The reason for this is I want to make sure that this lower control arm bolt is tight. Alright everybody, and that's how you would go about installing a ST suspension coilover kit on a 2007 Volkswagen Rabbit. Of course, this process would be similar to any other coilover kit, or even if you were just simply installing lowering springs or stock springs as well as stock shock absorbers. So this repair will cover a lot of different things you might be encountering, whatever your decision is to do with your vehicle. But of course, if you do have any questions, please feel free to give us a call. We can be reached at 877-634-0063. Thanks for watching.